Hi, beloveds. I just got off of a conversation with my friend Jane, who had some really great questions about the Akashic Records, why we might want to look in our records, what's it for, why do children create situations of abuse and things like that. They were wonderful questions. And so she's given me permission to send this out to everyone so that you can get some additional information too, because a lot of clarification came through. So I hope that you enjoy. My name is Tamala Malay, your empowerment partner, professor, and psychic. So let's get started.
So again, back to your video that I watched. You have the concept that nobody is ever a victim.
Mm-hmm.
So just trying to, wrap my mind around that concept and the concept that we sort of ask or welcome things to have, like it's not so like a child that's a helpless child that would be child abuse. Like I'm not pushing back on it. I'm simply trying to understand the concept, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And I had the same questions, when I first started learning about the law of attraction and, all of these things, because I was a child of sexual abuse. And so it was like, I was 5 years old the first time. I was 10 years old the second time. I was, it's like 3 different people, like I didn't ask for this, right? So I completely understand the question. But what I came to understand in doing the Akashic record work is the no baby, right here. There's several different things, and I want to get them in order so it's easier to understand. Babies are not new beings, right? We see babies, right? They're birthed and they're brand new and they're precious and they're wonderful. They didn't come into existence when they're being birthed. Okay, they're a soul that has already existed for thousands and thousands and eons maybe, right? And so that if we can hold that idea, okay, it might be possible that even though this is a baby and this is a child, that this is not their first rodeo, right? It's not their first experience on the planet or being in a body. And so because they probably have been in a body before, they've made other choices in past lives that created karmic consequences, right? People talk about karma all the time, and really karma is just the tool or the mechanism that takes us from our choice to our consequence, right? We have a choice. Karma spits out the consequence, right? It's neither good or bad. It's just neutral, right? So we make a choice that's aligned to, let's say, divine truth and divine self-expression. Then we get the consequence of more fullness of our divine self-expression, right? More fullness of being able to speak our truth, more fullness of being able to attract abundance, right? Or we make a choice that is against our divine truth and divine self-expression, right? And then that karma is just going to pop out that consequence. And that natural consequence is a block or restriction, it's disempowerment, it's fear, it's lack, right? It's something that's not divine truth and divine self-expression, for example. And so what happens is if we don't resolve these choices while we're in the lifetime that we created them, when we die, when we leave our body, those consequences or that karma still exists. Okay, just because we die doesn't mean our slate's wiped clean, right? We made choices, we had consequences. We still have to resolve those. And so we leave our body, no matter how it happens, and we do whatever we do when we're in the spirit world, and we decide to be in a body again, right? So when we come back into a body, we actually pick up where we left on karmically. So it's not necessarily, and I've had this question, well, if I was abused in this lifetime, does that mean I was an abuser last time? That's not how it works. Usually when we're in a victim perpetrator pattern, generally we don't switch back and forth, right? So if we're a perpetrator, we're a perpetrator. And if we're a victim, we're a victim. Because we're getting the consequences of whatever side we're on, right? So if I made choices that disempowered me from being divine truth and divine self-expression, and I did that enough, and I did that enough, and specifically I did that around sex, okay? Let's say maybe I had a husband, I married him for whatever reason that wasn't aligned for me. Maybe I loved somebody else, but I married this guy because my parents told me to, right? That would be disempowering because I violated my own truth and my own self-expression, and I did something other people wanted me to do, right? So that would be a lowering of my alignment, right? So then I'm married to this person, and maybe I don't want to have sex with him, but I do because it's expected of me, right? Society expects it. He demands it. I don't want to. I do it anyway. That violates my divine truth and divine self-expression again, right? And so every time I participate in that pattern of doing it anyway, even though it's against what I want to do, but I'm choosing to do it anyway out of fear or expectation or whatever, it just lowers and lowers and lowers and lowers my personal empowerment, my personal alignment, right? And so at some point, we get ourselves into a victim state, right? We move out of the concept of making choices into the concept of, oh, now I'm a victim, right? And so when we get into that victim state, we actually then attract, because of the law of attraction, attract opportunities to be a victim. And so if it's specifically around, if we created that victimhood around sex, then the consequence most likely will also show up around sex, but it can show up anywhere, okay? It doesn't have to just be sex. It could also, because sex is second chakra, it could be around creation, manifestation, sex, money, children, right? So it gets really complicated, and that's why these sessions that I do are really long sessions, and we get into a lot of detail, is because it can get really complicated because it's based on whatever choice the person made. So I just kind of gave a random example, but that example, if I had disempowered myself over and over and over, which I had in past lives, I had given my power over to other people and said, well, I'm going to do what you say because it's expected of me, right? I'm not going to speak up for myself. I'm not going to speak my truth, right? I did all of that in past lives. And so each lifetime when I came back, I still had to address those issues. And I had opportunities to make choices, which means I was put in situations where other people expected things of me. And again, I could choose to just say, no, I'm not going to do it. This is not going to happen for me. Or I could continue to disempower myself, right? And say, okay, and do it anyway, right? And once we do that, when we get into that pattern of continued disempowerment and we become a victim, then we begin to attract victimization. And once we're in that pattern of attracting victimization and we don't resolve it before we leave our body, right before we die, when we come back in, our resonance is victimization. So therefore, we're going to be attracting people and places and experiences so we can be victimized because it's what we're resonating with. Now, it also gives us the opportunity in this life to make a different choice, right? Now, as a child, are your choices more limited? Absolutely. Like for me, the 5-year-old, when it happened when I was 5, I told people and they didn't believe me. So that just kind of perpetuated the victimization, right? So then at 10, when it happened again with another person from the ages of 10 to 11, I didn't tell anybody because I didn't expect to be hurt, right? And it went on for an extended period of time, like, gosh, I don't even remember how long, but it would have been somewhere around a year, maybe more. And, but not speaking about it literally was against my divine truth and divine self-expression, right? Because, I wasn't speaking my truth. I wasn't speaking what was happening. And so when it happened again, when I was 14 by another person, I was like, no, I'm not having this anymore. Nope, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this anymore. And I stood up for myself in the moment when it was happening, right? Because I was, I weighed 98 pounds. I was still small and little, but I got angry. I had an emotional response that was more empowering than disempowering. And I'll explain a little bit more about that in a minute. But what I did was I shifted out of victimization into, this is not fucking happening to me again, right? And that rage of no came up. And when that no came up, it broke the cycle. Because once I decided, no, this is not going to happen anymore, it completely took the power out of the situation. And the person just went, okay, I'm sorry, and left. Because it wasn't the experience between us, that particular situation, wasn't about the sex, right? It was about the karmic consequences, the karmic cycle. He was perpetrating my victimhood. When I stopped being a victim, there was nothing for him to perpetuate. Yeah, that's a weird word, but you know what I mean. There wasn't anything for him to do, right? I took the result away from him, right? And so he just left. And there was never another instance of sexual abuse after that. Now I did have, other issues with trying to learn, what's the difference between sex and love, and all of that, which is different patterns. But it kind of gives you an idea of how we can come in as children and terrible things can happen to us. It's not because we did anything in this life. It's the karmic consequences that we didn't fix last time. And that's why I always pray like really hard for people who are thinking about taking their lives. And I have conversations with them if I know about it, and I say, look, you have all the support, you have all the love that you need. Here are some resources. And also, if you don't figure it out this time, when you come back, it's going to be the same shit over again. You have to make a different choice. And that's how it happens over and over and over and over and over until we make that different choice. And that's where our empowerment begins to come back, right? We begin to learn, okay, wait a minute. I stood up for myself and that worked. I don't have to carry that anymore. I don't have to be worried about this anymore. And then I can begin to work on the mental and emotional effects of, what happened, what choices I want to see in the future, how I understand relationships, right? That goes into the coaching part, right? Or the counseling part or the therapy part, right? But we can't get to the therapy part if we're still continuing the same choices of victimhood, right? Mm-hmm. That seems like a really overly complicated answer, but I want to be as thorough and forthright as I can.